everyone. My name is Ms.Gan. Today we'll be looking at Biology SPM Trial Paper 2021, Set 1, Selangor paper. Okay, let's look at the first question. Diagram 1.1 show a type of protozoa that live in a pond. Name cell component P. Right, so cell component P, we look at P here. P is contractile vacuole. Okay. Explain the role of cell component P to ensure the survival of the protozoa in its habitat. Okay, so what is the function of contractile vacuole to ensure the survival? So the question is asking for the survival of the protozoa. Now, the role of cell component P is to carry out osmoregulation. Now, osmoregulation is a process by which water diffuses into the contractile vacuole until it reaches the maximum size. Now, student, you must write down until it reaches maximum size. And then only it will contract to excrete the water from time to time. So, osmoregulation is a process by which the water that diffuse into the contractile vacuole will reach a maximum size, and then the contractile vacuole will contract to excrete out the water from time to time. Okay, next. The pond inhabited by the protozoa undergoes change in pH value due to the spillage of a type of chemical substance. Clarify the importance of structure Q to overcome the situation. Okay, total mark is 2 marks. So now we want to see the function of structure Q and how it overcome so let's look at Q here. Q is the cilia. Okay, so we're going to see what is the contribution of cilia in overcoming this situation of a change in pH value. Now, cilia, you must name Q first. Q is cilia because it is an unknown. So every time when there is an unknown, you must be able to name the unknown first to obtain your first mark. Okay, Q is used for movement by rhythmic beats. That means the paramecium will use cilia to move away from the acidic condition. Okay. So by moving away from the chemical substance, it means that paramecium can react or respond to stimuli. Right? So it moves away just like we too move away from stimuli. So the paramecium will move away from the acidic condition. Okay. Okay, next, let's look at the next question. Okay, diagram 1.2 show a living process undergoes by protozoa due to the change in pH value in the pond. State the type of reproduction carried out by the protozoa. So you can see here the protozoa actually undergoes sexual reproduction because you can see here there are 2 paramecium, yeah. So the name for the sexual reproduction is conjugation. Okay, let's look at question 2. Question 2 shows cross-section of a leaf. So you have X here, Y, which is the stoma, the cell, gut cell, and Z is the stoma here. This is spongy mesothelium. So we are name cell X and cell Y. So cell X is spongy mesothelial cell, and Y is the gut cell. Diagram 2.2 shows Z seen through ventral view. Okay, so ventral means from the bottom up. Okay, you're looking from the bottom. Explain why the number of Z is abundant in the lower epidermis than in the upper epidermis of the leaf. Okay, so why is that more abundant in the lower epidermis compared to the upper epidermis? Now, being at the lower epidermis will reduce loss of water to the environment by evaporation. So if the stoma is found on the upper part more, then it is directly exposed to sunlight that will result in the plant losing a lot of water by evaporation. Then the plant will become wilted. So by having more stoma at the bottom of the leaf, actually prevent the plant from being wilted on the hot day. Okay, next, diagram 2.3 shows the opening mechanism of Z. So explain how ion W is involved in the mechanism. Now, stoma, this is the mechanism of the opening of stoma in which ion W is involved. So you have to explain how ion W help in the mechanism. So ion W here is potassium ion. All right, so potassium ion is actively pumped. So actively pumped means it's through active transport into the gut cell. Okay, during the day where photosynthesis takes place, and that generates a lot of energy for the process of active transport of potassium ion into the gut cell. Okay, so that means the solute potential in the vacuole will increase. So with more potassium means more or higher solute potential. So this will cause water to diffuse into the gut cell by osmosis because the adjacent cells are hypotonic to the gut cell. So the water will diffuse from the adjacent cell into the gut cell by osmosis. Okay, and the gut cell will become turgid and curve outwards because of the water entering into the gut cell. Okay. Okay, next we see the next question. Okay, next, diagram 3.1 shows the lock and key hypothesis of enzyme reaction. Okay, so you can see here Q, P, R, and S. So Q is the enzyme, P is the substrate, R and S is the product. Based on diagram 3.1, which is the enzyme and why? Okay, let's look back at the question. So you can see that Q here have active site, right? So Q is the enzyme. It has active site, and the other thing is it does not change at the end of the reaction. That means if you look carefully at the diagram, Q does not change in terms of its shape as well as its active site. It does not change. Okay. Okay, next. Digestion of substrate in the reaction in diagram 3.1 produces glucose and galactose. Name the enzyme that catalyzes this reaction. Now, to produce glucose and galactose, you need the enzyme lactase. Okay, lactase will hydrolyze lactose into glucose and galactose. B, give reason why in metabolism reaction, enzyme is only required in small quantity to act on the substrate. Now, why do you need only a small quantity of enzyme? Now, the reason is enzyme is not destroyed or changed at the end of the reaction, and it can be used repeatedly. So you can see that enzyme the active site remains the same, it does not change. So you don't really need to use a lot of enzyme because it is not destroyed at the end of the reaction. Okay, diagram 3.2 show a shirt with blood stain. The shirt was washed with washing powder containing protease enzyme at temperature 60 degrees Celsius. Okay, so bear in mind it's 60 degrees Celsius. Now, if you look at the diagram, the blood stain after washing still remains. So that means it did not get washed away. Okay. Now, explain the outcome of the washer. Now, first we talk about the outcome. The outcome is that the blood stain remains, right? From the diagram, you can see that the shirt, the blood stain still remain. Because 60 degrees Celsius is too high a temperature for this enzyme to work best. Therefore, the enzyme has actually become denatured. Okay, denatured means it is destroyed. Okay, so that is why the blood stain cannot be removed. All right, so that the first one is the observation, part 2, part 3 is the reason or the explanation behind it. Okay, right, next. Let's move on to question 4. Diagram 4 is a graph that shows oxygen intake against time experienced by an individual that carries out vigorous activity. Okay, so you see here, the graph here shows this part here, P. Okay, this part P here is when the person is exercising. Okay, so the oxygen required is this much. And then when the person recover after running, this is the amount of oxygen intake that is required to replace or to pay back that oxygen that was insufficient during exercise. Okay. Now let's see the question. Based on diagram 4, identify the shaded area P and Q, right? So P and Q. So the answer is P is the part where the person is exercising, so he's experiencing oxygen depth, while Q is when the oxygen depth is paid. Okay, so I want you to look back at the graph here. You see P here. The amount of oxygen that is insufficient is the shaded red in color, while the purple color here is the amount of oxygen needed to pay back that oxygen debt that incur during exercise. Now, write the equation for biochemical process that occur in area P, right? So area P is a process in which oxygen that occur. So that means there is no oxygen supplied to the cell. So the cell will break down glucose without oxygen. Okay, so it will form lactic acid and energy. Now, lactic acid is an intermediary product. Okay, that means much of the energy is still being trapped in lactic acid. So the energy produced is actually very little. Okay, compared to when there is oxygen that can oxidize glucose completely. So the energy produced will then be 38 molecule ATP. But in this case here, only 2 molecules of ATP is produced because a lot of energy is still being trapped in the lactic acid. Okay, in a sports event, a participant of 800-meter run gets into oxygen depth. At the distance of 200 meters, the participant continued to run to reach the finishing line instead of stopping. explain the respiration that takes place in the muscle of the runner starting from distance 200 meters of the race. So which means that from the distance of 200 meters until the finishing line, the participant actually incur oxygen debt because the first 200 meters he was running and using the demand for oxygen is able to be supplied by the heart and the lung. Okay, the intake that is for the first 200 meters is sufficient. However, after 200 meters, the person runs into oxygen debt. Okay, so the person undergo oxygen deficiency or oxygen debt because now that the oxygen is insufficient, the muscle cell will have to undergo lactic acid fermentation. Okay, and the breakdown of glucose becomes incomplete because there is no oxygen. That means the supply of oxygen is insufficient. So the glucose will break down incompletely. Okay, not completely, incomplete, to form lactic acid and energy. Now, the amount of ATP produced is only 2 molecules of ATP, right? So this is what happens when a person is carrying out lactic acid fermentation. Okay. After finishing his race, the athlete rests and undergo recovery. State the importance of recovery to his skeletal muscle tissue. Now, why does the man have to recover? Okay. Now, the reason is lactic acid has to be removed. Okay. When the person is at rest, the accumulated lactic acid has to be oxidized. Okay. So that the muscle can recover. The person can recover from muscle cramp once the oxygen has been used to oxidize the lactic acid completely. Then we say the oxygen debt is paid. Okay, right? So that is the answer for this question, right? Okay, so let's move on to the next question. Diagram show the response of a seedling that is placed in the gut. Now, this question is in chapter 5 of form 5. Is about hormone in plant. Okay, so you can see that initially when you place the seedling horizontally, after a while, the seedling will grow with the one side going down and the other side, which is the shoot, going upward. Based on the diagram, state the type of response that occur. Okay, so the type of response that occur is zootropism, right? So you can see it's a tropism process in which the root is going downwards and the shoot is going upwards. So it's a tropism process. Explain the effect of zinc hormone concentration on the response of the shoot plant. Okay, so high concentration of zinc at the bottom will stimulate faster elongation of shoot cell. Okay, so which means that at the bottom of the shoot here, so gravity will, if you put the shoot horizontal like this in the beginning, okay, you have the shoot like this, and then after that the roots will go this way, right, going downward. So the toxin will accumulate more at the lower side, at the bottom, or at the lower side of the roots. This is roots, huh? And because toxin actually inhibit the elongation of roots, therefore this section here grow faster than this section. So the root will then grow and bend downwards, okay, towards the gravity. So on the other hand, if you look at the shoot, okay, the shoot bend upward, right, when you put the seedling horizontal. So this auxin that accumulate at the lower part here will stimulate the elongation of shoot. So the shoot will go upward faster over this side compared to this side here. Okay, so that's why the shoot bend upwards. Okay, so that you conclude by saying that the shoot grow upward, or the shoot shows negative geotropism, while the roots actually show positive geotropism. Okay, next. Okay, let's look at this question now. Diagram 5.2 show a method that is carried out by a farmer to produce seedless watermelon. So phytohormone acts as spray on unfertilized flower. So the flower then produces fruit that is seedless, right? Watermelon that is seedless. Name phytohormone X. Okay, so the phytohormone that can stimulate the production of seedless fruit is auxin. Now, gibberellin also can. Next, predict what will happen to the survival of the seedless fruit species. Explain your answer. Now, what it means here is that if you keep on producing seedless fruit, what will happen to the fruit itself, the fruit tree itself? What will happen to its survival in the future? Okay, so the species will one day become extinct because there is no seed for it to propagate, right? So the seed will become extinct and there is no seed to reproduce for the next generation. Okay, and of course, when there is no seed or the fruit produced, there is no variation, right? Because the production of a seed must go through the process of meiosis. And since there is no meiosis, therefore there is no variation. Okay, and of course, with no variation, it also reduces biodiversity. Okay, next, table 1 is the statement related to response X and response Y that occur in plant. So response X is tendril of long bean plant twined to a wood for support. Response Y is the leaf of mimosa fold inward when touched. So you have one that the twine on a wood, the other one is it closes when you touch, right? So that is for Mimosa pudica. So what is the similarities between both of them, between X and Y? Okay, both are respond to touch. Now the first one is respond to touch because as it twine around a wood, okay, it is actually touching on the wood and then twine around it. So it is a response towards touch. Because when it touches the wood, it will twine around the wood. Okay, so both are responses to touch. Now, the differences between both are, okay, the first one we call thicmotropism because it is touch. Thick is touch. So it's a growth response. It's a tropism response because the twining around the stem actually leads to growth. Whereas the second type is called nastic or seismonastic, right? Seismonastic is actually a response to touch. Okay, response F give a growth effect. That means the plant will grow, whereas response Y does not produce a growth response. It's more like for survival. Depending on the direction of the stimulus, that means when it touches, it will grow towards that direction of the stimulus. Whereas for Sismonacea like Mimosa pubica, you can touch and it will just close. It does not depend on the direction in which you touch. Okay. Next is slow and unclear response, meaning the response you can't see, it's not apparent. Whereas for Sismonacea, it's quick, clear, and apparent.
Diagram shows a tree map of a human skeletal system. Okay, so human skeletal system is divided into axial skeleton and appendicular skeleton. Under appendicular skeleton, there's pelvic girdle. Okay, so one for you to answer here. P, upper limb and lower limb. Okay, so based on diagram 6.1, what is P? What is P? Okay, so another component of appendicular skeleton is pectoral girdle. Okay, next, state one importance of skeletal system to human. What is the importance? Okay, we want to look at the importance of skeletal system to human. Okay, so there are many importance. The first one is to maintain body shape. Okay, so here if you look at the marks, it's only one mark. So you only require to write one. Okay, so anyway, I will give you the rest of the importance. It protects internal organ from injury, as well as support soft body tissues. Okay, so any of these answers. Next, diagram 6.2 show an athlete that's about to start a run. Okay, so complete the diagram by drawing the condition of muscle X and muscle Y when the athlete bend his leg. So you can see here that the Y here is pointing to the muscle over this side behind our thigh, and X is in front of our thigh. Now the person is bending his leg, so it's similar to our bending of our forearm. So here is likened to the biceps here. If it's in your arm, then this is the Y is the bicep, here is the tricep. Okay, so biceps femoris and quadriceps femoris, right? So we want to see how we want to draw. Now, for X to relax, you need to draw the muscle a little bit long. Okay, I'll try my best here to draw. So it's attached to the attached to the tendon. Draw it long. Whereas this one, draw it a little bit is like contracting. So Y is contracting, so you draw it a little bit sort of like a bit bigger. Okay, because Y contracts, bicep contracts, whereas X relaxes. So that means X, you have to draw the muscle a little bit long, whereas bicep, you draw it a bit short, and it is a little bit thicker, the muscle. Okay, so that's how you draw the muscle. So make sure it's attached to the tendon at the end. Okay, predict what will happen if the tendon in the athlete's knee was torn when he carries out the activity. Now, what will happen? If the tendon is torn, okay, can he still do all his daily activities? Okay, definitely not, right? Because the tendon function is to attach the muscle to the bone, right? So if there is no more tendon or the tendon is torn, then the quadriceps femoris muscle cannot be connected to the knee bone. So the muscle cannot attach to the bone, right? So the person will feel severe pain because they ask you to predict what would happen if his tendon, you are supposed to predict. So predict what will happen. So the first thing is, this is the effect here. This is what will happen to the person. Okay, he will feel pain. His leg cannot be straightened anymore because the muscle is no longer attaching to the bone. So he cannot straighten his leg. And his knee will become swollen and bruised. Okay, so remember, this is quite a popular question. It's constantly asked. So these are the answers. Okay, of course, he will not be able to move also. Okay, next, we look at this diagram here. Diagram 6.3 shows two health problems involving the musculoskeletal system. So you can see that this person, individual S, her muscle, her bone is bad. Okay. But individual T, her vertebral column is shaped in the shape of a C shape, right? So the condition of both are different. So here, explain one difference for the problem faced by individual S and T. So we want to know what is the problem faced by individual S, okay, who has a bend in front, and the other one has a vertebral column that is already not straightened. It's not straightened. So what kind of, what's the different problem faced by individual S and T? So S suffer from osteoporosis. Now, this is a common bone disorder faced by adults, especially older people. Okay, while T is actually mainly in children who has just reached puberty who suffered from scoliosis. Now for S, the result why they suffer from osteoporosis is because their bones are brittle, weak, and easily broken. Whereas T, the spine vertebral column bends to the side, forming a S or C shape. So the shape, as you can see earlier, it is bent towards one side. Okay, it's like a S or a C shape. Next, S is common in women who suffer from menopause. That means women who have reached menopausal age. Okay, now one of the reasons is because of lack of estrogen, as the hormone estrogen decreases when a person reaches menopause age. So that without or lack of estrogen cause the absorption of calcium to be less. So therefore, women is more likely to have a higher risk and suffer from osteoporosis. Okay, for scoliosis, it is because of abnormal spinal growth during or after puberty. So during or after puberty, a young teenage boy or girl would probably undergoing growth spurt. So the growth that is so rapid would mean that the spinal, the vertebral column also have to grow fast. So sometimes there is a abnormality during growth. So that therefore it doesn't grow properly. So it grow and it bend towards one side, okay, in the shape of S or C. Okay, let's look at the next question now. Okay, this is for 5 questions. Plant P and Q are supplied with different radioactive substances. Plant P, this is plant P, are exposed to radioactive carbon dioxide, while plant Q, okay, so remember, this plant here, the leaf is wrapped with radioactive carbon dioxide, whereas plant Q, it is planted in a soil that is added with radioactive phosphate ion. Okay, so one is radioactive carbon dioxide, the other one radioactive phosphate ion. Okay, after 8 hours, both plants were tested for radioactivity. Radioactive sucrose is present in plant B, and radioactive phosphorus is present in plant Q. Explain how the sucrose is produced. Now, sucrose is produced during photosynthesis, whereby when carbon dioxide react with water in the presence of light and chlorophyll to form glucose molecule. Now, glucose will then will form sucrose. Okay, so the initial sugar that is formed is glucose. Okay, now glucose will then be converted into sucrose. Okay, so sucrose is a disaccharide. So glucose will combine with fructose to form sucrose. Okay, explain how the phosphate ion are taken up by the plant root. Okay, so plant roots, okay, so this is another answer, continuation, because this one got 2 marks here. So glucose is then converted to sucrose to be transported in phloem. Okay, let's look at the next question. Explain how phosphate ion taken up by the root, plant roots. Now, this one has to do with chapter 3 of Form 4. Okay, you know that all ions are taken up by root hair cell via active transport. So this is in Form 4, chapter 3. Yeah? Okay, Form 4, chapter 3. So the nutrient solution in the soil is higher. The concentration of phosphate is higher because you add phosphate ion in the soil. So the surrounding soil water is high in the concentration of phosphate ion. Okay. And however, the cell of the root hair, okay, has an even higher concentration of the ion. All right. So the higher concentration of phosphate ion than the cell set of the root hair ion. Okay. Now, actually, it is lower, even though you put in the nutrient here. So it needs to be taken by active transport. Okay, although you put concentration phosphate ion in the soil, so the transport is still by active transport. Okay, transporting the ion into the root hair cell. Okay, now another experiment was set up in diagram 7.2 for plant R. Okay, so you see this is plant R. One of the leaf is covered with a container that has radioactive carbon dioxide. Nutrient solution containing radioactive phosphate ion is found inside the soil here. Okay, so there are 3 leaves labeled here, J, K, L, and on the left side, there's 1 leaf here, N. Okay, and then you can see here, there's a part here where the stem, the outer layer of the stem bark has been removed. Okay, Name the process that will be affected when the part was removed. Okay, so one part of the stem was removed at part S. So as you can see here, S here, the part here has been removed. So what is the process? Okay, that will be affected. So now you see what happened is the process of translocation is going to be affected. Okay, translocation is the transport of product, right? Like products of photosynthesis from the leaf to the other parts of the plant, right? Okay, so what happened is when you remove the bark, so you remove phloem as well. Because when you cut the bark, you cut away the phloem as well. So phloem is being removed. So here, after a while, it's going to be what? Going to be swollen. So it will be swollen on the upper part here because of the accumulation of the food substances. Okay, so this part, the upper part of where the bark, this is called bark ringing. So the upper part becomes swollen while the lower part will wither. So that's because the phloem has been removed at this part here, as so food substances, organic substances cannot be transported down. So if the organic substances accumulate on the upper part of the bark. Okay, which leaf JKLM would not be tested positive for radioactive sucrose? Now, explain your answer. Will not be tested for positive radioactive sucrose. Okay, so if you look at the diagram just now, where is JKLM? Okay, JKLM. Now, LM is below the S part, while JK is above. So, if you remove the part here, the part of the leaf that will be affected will be the one below the S. The upper part, JK, will not be affected. So, leaf L and M, which is the lower leaf after the part where you remove the phloem. Okay, so this is part S, and then the two leaf L and M will not get organic substance, so they will would not be tested for radioactive sucrose. Okay, because the radioactive sucrose cannot be transported downwards. Okay, so phloem is removed from part C, part S, and the food produced at the upper part of the ring cannot be transported to the lower part of the ring. Okay, so that is the answer, leaf L and M. Okay, let's move on. Now, which leaf will be tested positive for radioactive phosphorus? Explain your answer. Okay, let's go back to the question just now. Now, the question says that the plant is planted in a radioactive phosphate ion. So here, the roots will absorb the water as well as the phosphate ion. And you know that water and minerals like ions are transported through what? through xylem, right? So will the leaf all be affected? Will the leaf still be able to obtain the radioactive phosphorus? Answer is yes. All the leaf will be tested for positive for radioactive phosphorus. Now remember just now when you remove the bark, you are removing only phloem. You are not removing xylem. So therefore the roots that is immersed in the soil, okay, they have lots of phosphorus. Now this phosphorus here in the soil will still be absorbed through the xylem upward. So it will not affect the leaf that is found, whether it's below the part where you cut or above, because xylem is not removed. So the radioactive phosphate ion can still be transported up from the roots to all parts of the plant. Okay. Okay, we are now at question 8. Now, diagram 8 shows the inheritance of two comb shape in chicken between a heterozygous buttercup comb chicken with homozygous strawberry comb chicken. Okay, now the buttercup comb is dominant. So the buttercup comb here, okay, you can see it has this kind of shape, right? The comb has this buttercup comb, whereas this one has a strawberry comb. Now both the offspring have both the buttercup and also the strawberry comb. Okay. The following is about the comb shape, which is controlled by a pair of allele. So B is the dominant allele, while small b is the recessive allele. State the genotype of chicken P and R. Okay, so what is the genotype of chicken P and R? Okay, so P is, remember, buttercup comb is dominant, whereas strawberry comb is recessive. So P is BB, one capital B, one small b, which is heterozygous, and R is small b, two small b, because this is dominant. Now, it cannot be homozygous because there is offspring that is having strawberry comb. So strawberry comb is recessive. So P has to be heterozygous. So then only you can get R, the strawberry comb, which is recessive. Okay. Okay, now we're going to draw the schematic diagram to show the trait of the offspring if P and S are crossed. So let's see what is P. Now P is big B, small b, and S is, what is S? What is S? Okay, let's go back again. What do you think S is? Is it big B, or big B, small b? So it has to be big B, small b, because the parents Q is double small b, and the big one, the P, has one big P, one small b. Okay, so first write the parent P times X. Phenotype is buttercomb times buttercup comb. Genotype BB, BB, both. Gamete big B, small b, big B, small b. Okay, after fertilization, you get big B, big B, big B, small b, big B, small b, and small b, small b. So the phenotype, buttercup comb, buttercup comb, buttercup comb, and strawberry comb. So the genotype is one big B to two small b, sorry, yeah, two big B, small b. So this one is big B, small b, and one small b, small b. So this one got two big B, small b. So the phenotype ratio is 3:1. 3 buttercup comb to 1 strawberry comb. Okay. Next. Okay, let's look at the question. Explain how trait among offspring in 8D1 can be produced. So how this one can be produced. Now, allele B is always mentioned which one is dominant. Allele B is dominant to allele B. So if the organism is dominant homozygous or heterozygous B, small b, it will show a phenotype of buttercup comb, definitely, because it carries a dominant allele. If the organism is a recessive homozygous small b, it will only show strawberry comb phenotype, okay? It will not show a buttercup comb. So that is how the traits are being inherited. Next, explain how chicken with strawberry comb is obtained if both of the parents have buttercup comb. Now, how do you get strawberry comb if both the parents are buttercup comb? Buttercup comb is allele, must have the allele big B, yeah? So it's only possible if both the parents are heterozygous, which is carry one big B and one small b. Then only you can get the two small b come together, okay? Big B, both must be heterozygous, so at least you can get this pairing of two small b. So when the offspring inherit the two small b, then the strawberry comb will be produced. Okay, you obtain the strawberry comb. Okay, so you know the gamete is big B, small b, big B, small b. So you want to get this is the cross between this and this. So you get your strawberry comb. Okay. Okay, so I hope you all can understand the question, this question on inheritance. Okay. Let's begin and continue with our paper 2, Selangor, set 1. Okay, so let's look at essay now. Diagram 9 show the longitudinal section of villi. Epithelial cell line the villi. So this is a diagram where you can see that the villi or villus, singular is villus, and they zoom into the cell and they label two parts of the cell. Okay, let's look at the question. Organelle acts as the site of cellular respiration. Explain why organelle X is found abundantly in epithelial cell. Okay, let's look back at the question. Organelle X. Okay, so what is organelle X? Okay, organelle X is mitochondria. and mitochondria generate more energy, okay, to carry out active transport for nutrient absorption. So this, because this is a villus, and villus is involved in the absorption of nutrient. So absorption of nutrient requires a lot of energy. So that's why there's a lot of mitochondria. Okay, you make sure you do not use the word supply or provide, because the word supply or provide is not the suitable word for mitochondria. Mitochondria does not supply, neither does it provide. It generates energy. Okay, so please bear in mind, student, do not use the word, these two words in your answer. Okay, next, explain why does the membrane surface of the epithelial cell of the villi form tiny projection or structure? Why? So if you look at the question again, you find that there is this tiny projection that comes out from the structure of the cell. Okay, so they are asking why does the membrane form this tiny projection? Okay, this tiny projection is actually microvilli. Okay, microvilli. And microvilli increases the total surface area so that food absorption become easier and faster. So we want the food absorption to be more efficient. So you need to increase total surface area so that it can occur more rapidly and more efficiently. Okay. Now, normally we no need to say TSA over V over volume. We just have to say increase total surface area. Okay, next, let's look at the next question. Liver is one of the most important organ involved in the process of digestion. Describe the function of liver in assimilation of digested food. Now, the meaning of assimilation, it means the use of all the nutrient that is in their end product that you have obtained from digestion. How do the body, the cell, make use of all these nutrients? How does the liver assimilate all these digested food in a form of nutrient for the benefit of the cell? How do they use it for the cell? Okay, so first, liver will use the amino acid that has been obtained from the end product of protein digestion to make new plasma protein, okay, which is our own cell plasma protein, right? So the liver will synthesize plasma protein and enzyme from the amino acid that we obtain from digested food. Okay, next, the liver will also expel all the excess glucose in a form of urea. So excess amino acid cannot be stored in our body because it can be toxic. So it needs to be converted or broken down through a process called deamination to form urea. So that means excess amino acid is converted to form urea, which is then excreted out through our urine. Okay, next, when glucose is insufficient, liver will convert the amino acid into glucose. Okay, so these are some function of for amino acid. Okay, let's look at the function of liver for glucose. What happened to glucose when it is in the liver? Now, the glucose in the liver will be used for cellular respiration so that it can produce energy, right? And excess glucose is converted into glycogen and stored in the liver. So glycogen is a form of carbohydrate that is stored in our muscle. So we have glycogen which is stored in not just in the liver but also in the muscle. Okay, so this glycogen can be converted quickly into glucose when our blood glucose is low. Okay, so when blood glucose decreases, then glycogen is converted back to glucose. So which means that the liver regulates the amount of glucose. Okay. Okay, when glycogen reaches its maximum, not all will be continue to be converted into glycogen because the storage, the amount of glycogen has reached its maximum. Then this excess glucose will be converted to fats. So when you have too much of glucose, you actually can be converted to fats. Okay, so let's look at the next question here. Okay, the following poster is one of the campaign launched by the Ministry of Health. Okay, so this is a poster that shows the Malaysian Healthy Plate. Now, Malaysian Healthy Plate consists of quarter, half. So you can see here, the quarter here is protein, carbohydrate, and the half is vegetable and fruits. Okay, so that means you have to fill up your plate, quarter with protein, quarter with carbohydrate, and another half with fruits and vegetable. Okay, as a nutritionist, explain the importance to plan your meal based on Malaysian Healthy Plate for individual with health problems such as cardiovascular problem, obesity, and cancer patient. Okay, look at the question. The question carries 10 marks. So there are 3 different health issues that you need to discuss. So you can allot marks accordingly. Say 3 to 4 marks for each of the question. So we're going to explain based on Malaysian Healthy Plate. So don't forget, you've got to incorporate this into planning a meal for a patient with cardiovascular problem. So you have to plan the meal suitable to be taken by a patient with cardiovascular problem. Okay, so for the cardiovascular problem, based on the Malaysian Healthy Plate, your half the plate, you must mention that it must consist of fruits and vegetables, and quarter of the plate is filled with carbohydrate. But what kind of carbohydrate would be suitable? So carbohydrate that is high in fiber, like oats, cereal, this type of food like oat and cereal actually reduces cholesterol. Remember, this patient is having heart problem, so probably his heart problem here could be due to the deficit of cholesterol in the inner lining of the arteries. So that means he has to reduce the intake of cholesterol. So therefore, it will be more suitable for him to eat a diet that will help to lower his cholesterol. Okay, next, the quarter plate of salmon here is suggested because salmon is rich in omega-3. So omega-3 helps with the heart, okay, and it also balances out the ratio of total cholesterol in the body. So that will reduce the bad cholesterol, as well as the grill, the way it is cooked. Grill does not incorporate much oil, you don't fry it, so that will help your patient with heart problem. So the thing you have to look into this question is that make sure you not only suggest the food, okay, the food that is suitable for the patient, but also the way it is cooked. Okay, how is it cooked? Because the way of it is cooked is going to determine whether it's suitable for the patient or not. Okay, and then the other thing you need to pay attention is that your answer must contain the ratio healthy plate, which is the half, quarter, quarter, half, quarter, quarter. So now your objective of the is fulfilled. You are suggesting the meal which is based on ratio quarter plate. So you always have to refer back to the question to know whether you have answered correctly. Okay, next is explaining now. First is to suggest, next is to explain why do you suggest half the plate of fruits and vegetables. Okay, so here the half plate will help in the digestion, okay, will prevent constipation, will provide the vitamin and mineral that is needed by this patient. Okay, so now you are giving the reason. Oats and cereal are very good to reduce cholesterol, and the grilled salmon contain high omega, which is good, providing omega-3, which is the good cholesterol. So you are providing good cholesterol to the patient. Okay, let's look at the obese person now. Now, the obese person has a problem with his weight, so he has to reduce his weight. Okay, so his half plate must consist of fruits and vegetables. That's common for everyone. Quarter plate of brown rice. Okay, now brown rice has less sugar. Okay, less starch. So that would help with the obese person. Quarter plate of roasted chicken. Okay, so this is the protein part. So the suggestion is to take breast meat. Breast meat contain there are more lean meat in breast meat. There's less fats. We're trying to reduce fats, okay, in the patient, and the manner in which to cook it, probably the best is roast. Roast chicken also contain less oil, and of course he is encouraged to drink plain water and not sweet drinks. Fruit and vegetable contain high fiber that helps in digestion. So now you explain the reason why you suggest all the different type of food. Mineral provide, prevent and maintain good health. Brown rice has less starch that help to reduce the intake of sugar. Roasted chicken has high protein and less fat. Okay, so that is the answer for the obese. So now we look at, okay, we can also make sure that he avoid food that have fat and oil. Okay, so now we look at the question for cancer patient. What should a cancer patient eat? Okay, a cancer patient is of course can encourage to eat lots of fruits and vegetables actually. Quarter plate of white rice. Now he can take white rice because he's not having any obesity or diabetes problem. Quarter plate of steamed. Okay, see the way of cooking is different now. Use steamed fish, boiled egg, and fruit juices. So again, the fruit and vegetable contain high fiber that will help in digestion. Fruit juice will contain all the minerals and vitamin that is required to increase his immunity. Okay, so when a cancer patient go through chemotherapy or radiotherapy, his immune system may be weakened. So if he drinks and eat a lot of mineral vitamin, that will help to increase his immunity. White rice contains high carbohydrate to provide sufficient energy during cancer treatment. Steamed fish contain high in protein that help in healing and repairing of tissue because of the treatment that he's undergoing. There may be some damaged tissue due to the radiotherapy. So it'll be good that he replenish his protein to help with the repairing or the making of this new cell and tissue. Okay, so that's all for this question. So it's not that difficult to answer, yeah. Okay, let's look at question number 10 now. Now, 9 and 10 is a question that you can choose. So before you do the question, you choose which question you are more confident in answering so that you can score higher marks. So just now we see 9, now we look at 10. Now both are equal in terms of the difficulty of the question. So it all depends on you which one you want to choose, okay? Which one you are more confident of in answering. Now, a doctor tests the effectiveness of someone's nervous system by tapping on the knee using a rubber hammer. Diagram show the nerve pathway involved in the reflex action when the knee is knocked. So here, this is a method used by a doctor to test your function of your nervous system. Okay. Okay, define what is reflex action and is important. So reflex action is a fast and spontaneous action that a person take without much thinking, without thinking, is controlled by the spinal cord. So it happens very fast, very spontaneous, without waiting instruction from the brain. That means you don't have to wait for the brain to make a decision whether you want, in a way you should respond. So it's involuntary and it involves the skeletal muscle and spinal cord. So that means the information is relayed to the spinal cord. Okay, it does not. It reaches the spinal cord first to produce the response. Okay, then only after that is relayed to the brain to then only you understand what is happening. Okay, just for example, a reflex action where you pull your hand from a fire. So at first you just immediately pull. Then the realization of that you have burned your finger comes a split second after that. Okay, after the information is relayed to the brain. So even though it's only a split second, but that will prevent a deeper injury to your hand. Okay, so it's a fast, it's a spontaneous way of withdrawing from a dangerous stimuli. Okay, so you protect the person from further injury. Okay, next, based on the diagram, describe the pathway that caused the reflex action. Now, the reflex action that you saw just now when the doctor knocked the knee with a rubber hammer. Okay, so you are supposed to describe the nerve pathway. So when the tendon below the kneecap is knocked, the quadricep muscle will stretch. Okay, so quadricep muscle will stretch. So there is a stretch receptor at the quadricep muscle which will be stimulated, and this trigger a nerve impulse. So first talk about the detection of the stimuli. So the detection of the stimuli. Next, who detect it? The receptor. Okay, and then the receptor trigger the nerve impulse. Okay, then trigger it to transmit through sensory neuron to the motor neuron. So this motor neuron is in the spinal cord. And then the motor neuron transmit it from the spinal cord, okay, to the effector. Okay, so what is the effector? The effector is the muscle just now, the quadricep muscle. So this is what we call as pathway of this nerve pathway for the reflex action. Okay, so the response will be then the effector will produce a response. So the response here is the knee jerk. Okay, so your leg will jerk in front. So that is the whole pathway. Okay, so remember, you need to mention about receptor, the neuron involved, and the response. Okay, now there's only 2 neurons involved here. This is the simplest form of reflex action. This is not like the one that I've just mentioned earlier about touching of fire. That one will involve 3 neurons. That means the sensory neuron will have to transmit to the relay neuron first. Okay, so this relay neuron is in the brain. Then only transmit to the motor neuron. So this one involves 3 neurons, okay? 3 neurons. Whereas this one involves only 2 neurons. Okay, next. A boy was chased by an animal while on his way back after playing. Okay. Describe how nervous system and endocrine system cause physiological changes in his body during the situation. Okay, when he's chased by a dog, the stimulus that will be triggered will be sent to the hypothalamus. Is the first one that will detect and transmit nerve impulse through the adrenal medulla. So hypothalamus to adrenal medulla, directly straight to adrenal medulla. Okay, so the adrenal medulla will then be stimulated to secrete adrenaline and noradrenaline. So this will cause your heart rate beat to increase. So which means that the pathway is hypothalamus, nerve impulse to adrenal medulla, and then straight away secrete. This one you will use the word secrete. Adrenaline and noradrenaline. Okay, so these are 2 hormones, and this hormone trigger various type of responses. Okay, so the first one is it cause heart rate increase, breathing rate increase, blood glucose level increase, rate of metabolic activity increase, so everything increase. Heart pump more oxygen, more energy produced, and this will produce an immediate response. So these are all the response. Everything increase. Now you need to increase your heart rate so that you can pump more oxygen and more glucose to the cell so that the cell can start to quickly use it to produce energy so that you can run away from the situation. You get this bursts of energy to run away from the dog. Okay, so adrenaline helps you to cope with very dangerous situation so that you will be able to escape, flee, or you, in certain circumstances, you may want to fight. So that is why adrenaline is called a fight or flight. It's a fight or flight hormone. Okay, whether the person want to flee or fight with the situation. Okay. Next, let's look at this question. Diagram 10.3 shows symptom of health problem caused by the hormone imbalance. So this patient easily become fatigued, have numbness in his hand, frequently urinate, has sudden drop in body weight, often feel thirsty and slow wound healing. Okay, so these are the symptoms related to diabetes mellitus. But the question did not say, so you should know that some of the symptoms associated with diabetes mellitus, these are some of the symptoms. Okay, so you must be able to infer from the question what kind of disease this patient is suffering from. Okay, so you are to discuss the condition related to the hormone imbalance experienced by this patient and the measure, what kind of steps he can take to control his health problem. Okay, so this question carry 8 marks. Okay, first, identify the type of disease the patient is suffering from. So from the question, we know he's suffering from a diabetes mellitus. Now, you cannot just write diabetes because there's another type of diabetes called diabetes insipidus. So you won't get marks if you never mention the word mellitus. So the word mellitus is very important. Next, patient does not produce. Why does this patient suffer from this disease? Is because the patient does not produce enough insulin or cannot even use the insulin he produced. So that means he's producing, but the cell cannot use, okay, the insulin produced by the pancreas. The insulin is produced by the pancreas, and the excess glucose cannot change to glycogen. So because of the lack of insulin, so the excess glucose cannot be changed to glycogen. Okay. Next, because of that, since glucose cannot be changed to glycogen, so the glucose is in the blood is going to go up. It's going to be very high. And that brings in all the symptoms that is mentioned in the question just now. Okay, so the first part here is about condition. This whole P1 to P5 is the condition in the patient. So now you are going to discuss what measure you're going to take to control his health. So the first thing is to practice a healthy diet, a balanced diet which contain more fiber to reduce the food containing saturated fats. And of course, exercise regularly, reduce the body weight if excess, and carry out physical activity regularly. Now here, besides fat, you may want to suggest reduce intake of high carbohydrate food, okay, like sugar. Okay, so you have the patient have to eat, control his sugar, blood glucose level by eating correctly, by reducing or eliminating sugar altogether, and practice regular exercise. Okay, so it's this is the answer for this question. Okay, now we are going to question 11, which is a compulsory question. you don't have choice here. You have to answer this question. Okay, diagram show health problem in woman P and woman Q. So there are two problems here. One is a blocked fallopian tube. The other one is a growth of fibroid. Both women plan to conceive. As their personal doctor, clarify what are the advice and suggestions that can be given to them. So the blocked fallopian tube, the women cannot conceive. So does the fibroid. The fibroid also will not able to allow the woman to conceive because the fibroid will may stop implantation, you know. So what is the suggestion you can give to the both the women? Okay, so the best way would be to perform IVF. Now, IVF is called in vitro fertilization. So what we do is we take out the secondary oocyte from the ovary. Of course, before that, the women have to be injected with hormone such as FSH to encourage the growth of follicle. Okay, when the follicle is mature into secondary follicle, then only you remove the secondary oocyte. Okay, so it has to mature first. Okay, so this is a method in which you use a laparoscope. Now, you need to mention here, add the word concentrated. You must add concentrated sperm and secondary oocyte in a sterilized petri dish, but has culture medium so that the secondary oocyte can be fertilized by the sperm. So the medium in a petri dish is called culture medium. So this medium have all the growth component for the growing, for the zygote to grow into embryo, provide all the nutrients. Okay, so when the zygote has developed to become embryo, that means the zygote, after fertilization between the sperm that you have added with the secondary oocyte, form zygote. So then zygote will undergo mitosis to form embryo, okay, which is of 8 cells. And then you need to mention that you got to insert back the embryo into the uterus, okay, so that implantation can take place. Okay, so this is very important. You need to insert back for implantation, so you can use the mother if for the blocked fallopian tube, maybe she can carry the baby, but for the patient that has fibroid may not be able to carry the baby, so may need to use a surrogate mother. So the woman that have fibroid will not be able to be implanted with the blastocyst or embryo, okay, because of the presence of fibroid. Okay, so surrogate mother here means you use another woman to carry your baby. Okay, so that is the answer for this question. Okay, let's look at the final part B. A student carry out an experiment to study the growth and the life cycle of a rat and grasshopper. The growth curve for both organisms are shown in the diagram. So this is the growth curve of a rat. This is the growth curve of a grasshopper. Okay, so state the differences between the growth curve of both organisms. So we want to see what's the difference between a growth curve of a rat. How does it differ from a growth curve of a grasshopper? So a rat growth curve is similar to the rest of the organism, where it is a sigmoid curve here, whereas the rat shows a intermittent growth. Okay, it doesn't show a smooth sigmoid curve when we measure the length, when we take the length, not the mass. Okay, so growth curve of a rat is sigmoid. Growth curve of grasshopper is a series of staircase. Growth occurs gradually and continuously for the rat. Okay, so there's no it's slow increase, whereas the growth curve of a grasshopper is intermittent. That means it's discontinuous. It grow and then it stop. It grow and then it stop. So it's like a series of staircase. Growth curve consists of 6 phases. Now you can actually know that there's the you can divide it into the lag phase, the exponential phase, the slow growth phase, the maturity phase. Okay, and then and then you have your senescence and then aging. Okay, and finally, of course, death. Okay, so death. So it's a sigmoid curve which consists of 6 phases, whereas growth curve of a grasshopper consists of 5 instar phases and 1 adult. Okay, this is where adiasis occurs. So 5 instar, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and adult. Okay, so you actually can go back to the question and count. So you have 1, 2, 5 instar, which is also called the nymph, and 1 adult phase. Okay, next, rat, of course, does not have exoskeleton. It has endoskeleton. So this method of growth is carried out by animal that have endoskeleton, while grasshopper is an exoskeleton. So this method of this way of intermittent growth is only carried out by animals that has exoskeleton. Growth rate different at each phase, while growth rate occur rapidly at during adiasis. So this is adiasis here. Okay, so adiasis is when the growth occur very rapidly. The growth rate is very high. So all the vertical line shows that growth rate is very rapid during adiasis. So whereas the growth rate at sigmoid differ. So first you have very low growth, then you have higher or exponential kind of growth, very fast, very rapid. Then after that it slows down. Then you have 0 growth rate, and then after that when you reach senescence and death, it becomes negative. So the rate is different at different phase. So You have low, then exponential very fast, and then slow down, and then zero, and then it will slowly become negative for sigmoid, for the growth curve of a rat. Okay, explain the growth curve of the grasshopper. So now the question asks you to explain how come the growth curve of the grasshopper is like this? Why is it intermittent? Why is it in a form of staircase? Why does the growth curve of the grasshopper will have some sudden growth curve, spurt, and then stop? Why does it stop, grow? Okay. Now the growth curve shows a series of steps, and the reason why he has this kind of growth pattern is because grasshopper has a very hard exoskeleton which limits its growth. So that means the exoskeleton prevent it from growing. So the exoskeleton is a covering outside their body. So this is their body. This is the exoskeleton. So this exoskeleton is like an armor that prevent it from growing. Okay, so in order to grow, then the grasshopper would need to undergo ecdysis at least 4 to 5 times before reaching adulthood. Okay, so what happened during ecdysis? Now the grasshopper will take in a lot of air to force the old exoskeleton to split open. So here, what happened is a new exoskeleton will be formed first, just below the old exoskeleton. So this new exoskeleton, let's say this is the body. This is the new exoskeleton. It's the body of the insect. This is new. And then the old one is found outside. So when the new has been made, okay, some by absorbing from the substance from the old. Okay, so the insect will inhale in a lot of air, and because of the air, it will expand, and that will split or crack the old one will crack. So that allows the insect to, the old one crack and drop off. So the insect then emerge with the new skeleton. So this one no more. So it comes out with only just the new skeleton because the old one has been discarded because it's split open as the insect inhale in a lot of air, so cause the body to expand and break the old exoskeleton. So the new exoskeleton is formed, and before the new exoskeleton become hardened, the grasshopper will take in a lot of air again to increase its length. Okay, while the new exoskeleton is still soft, before it hardens, it quickly take in more air, so that will increase the length a bit more. So that is why during this time here, the length increase. So this one, the graph is length here. This is time. So let's say within this 1 day, the length has increased from here to here. Okay, so as it takes in air, before the, so this is the ecdysis. So within that same day, the length increase. So maybe you measure suddenly the length increase before the new exoskeleton become hardened. They quickly expand their body. Okay, so during the name stage, the insect stop growing. The name state is the horizontal line here. All these are the name state. Okay. All right, so that's all for today for paper 2. So we have completed the paper 2 Selangor set 1. So I'll see you the next time. Okay. All right, bye-bye.